Hey everybody, today I'm going to be making some creamy broccoli soup, and you could probably call it creamy broccoli and vegetable soup because there are a lot of vegetables besides broccoli. And also some people might call this kind of soup broccoli cheese soup, even though I make plant-based food and it doesn't have cheese in it. But whenever you use cashews, and it's going to use cashews and nutritional yeast, that kind of gives the food a cheesy flavor. So we could call it broccoli cheese soup if you want. I'm going to set these things off to the side here so that I could start doing the cooking part. And for the cooking part, I just have a big 8-quart pan. And I don't use oil, so I just use the heat of the pan to start sauteing the vegetables. And it results in a browning of the vegetables, just like if you used oil. But I don't use oil just because of a lot of reasons that I have about health, about calories, just everything in general. And I can taste the flavor of the vegetables better without the oil. So if you think about it, oil can mask the flavors of the food. And it does act as a flavor carrier, and some people do think food tastes better, but if you get used to not using it, after a while, you realize that if the flavors of the food are better plain. At least that's how I feel. But you know, everybody has their own way of cooking. So I'm putting a cup of diced onions in here. There's a yellow, like a sweet yellow onion. And I've got this, this pan on kind of medium high. Can't really see in it, but you can hear it sizzling away. And then I have some garlic, about 3 garlic cloves. I'll throw those in. And all I'm doing right now is I'm just kind of sauteing the vegetables for about 5 minutes because I like them to get some flavor. And the caramelization of the vegetables just from the hot pan provides some flavor that I enjoy in my vegetable soups. And I have other vegetables that I'm going to be adding. I'll put them here so you can see them a little bit better. I'm going to be using some cremini mushrooms, carrots. I'll go ahead and put the hard vegetables in now. This is about 3 kind of skinny carrots, not the giant ones. So I got those in there. And I can just hear it sizzling away, but it's not burning. I also have some celery. You can skip the celery if you don't have it, but I happen to have some celery, which I hardly ever have. And I don't know that I would buy it just for this soup, but since I already had it, I decided to go ahead and use it. And then I have some, about a half of a not very big organic red bell pepper. Again, I like a lot of different vegetables in my soup because then it becomes more like a creamy vegetable soup instead of just a broccoli soup. It has more layers of flavor, I guess you could say. So I'll let this cook just for a few minutes. Couple minutes, and then I have a jalapeno pepper. Go ahead and put that in. And then at any time when you're sauteing vegetables like this without oil, what we use for that is keep some vegetable stock around. So I have some vegetable stock here that I'm going to be using in the rest of the soup. And I can just add a little bit if it starts to stick to the pan or seems like it's getting too brown, and that kind of cools it down a little bit. And that's kind of like when people say they water saute, you know, they're using water instead of oil to saute. That's kind of what they mean. But I'm just using the vegetable broth. And then sometimes I find that it helps to cover the pan for a couple minutes, and that cooks the vegetables better. So for example, when you're not using oil, it's harder to saute onions because the onions will just stay kind of raw tasting. So what I found for myself that works really well is if I put a little vegetable stock in with my water, in with my vegetables, not water, vegetable stock. It provides flavor, but it also tends to cook the onions and make them taste better. Okay, so I think that's good enough. And then last but not least, I have about, I think 4 cremini mushrooms, the baby portobello mushrooms. And I don't have a lot of mushrooms in there, just a small amount, because I don't want the mushrooms to become a major flavor in the soup. I want the mushrooms to not stand out too much. So I'm going to add a little bit more of my vegetable stock to this and cover it and let it cook for a couple minutes while I talk to you about the other ingredients. I have a big container of vegetable stock right behind me. Okay, so I'm going to put the lid on. So the rest of the ingredients for the soup are, of course, broccoli, but we're not going to put the broccoli in until the potatoes are done, because the potatoes take a few minutes, and the broccoli, we don't want the broccoli to be cooked to death. So if we put the broccoli in too soon, then we'll have a bunch of soggy broccoli, and it will turn that kind of grayish color, and I don't think that's a very interesting, attractive thing to eat. I don't want to eat broccoli soup that tastes like overcooked broccoli, and you've probably had it before and didn't like it, so you know what I'm talking about. So I have my Yukon Gold potatoes over here, and the secret to making your potatoes ahead of time, I chopped everything up ahead of time so this would be a lot quicker, but with the potatoes, once you cut potatoes, they start turning brown once the air hits them. So it's always good to soak them in water until you get ready to use them. So I'm going to go ahead and drain the potatoes now. I have a strainer here that I had waiting for me, and I just strained the potatoes. And now everything looks like it's softened quite a bit. Oh, I got lots of steam coming up here, don't I? Oh yeah, I can tell the vegetables are soft. You can see they've kind of cooked down. Can't see that well, but they have cooked down, believe me. And now I can add everything else. I can add my potatoes. And this is about 4 Yukon Gold potatoes, not giant ones. They're kind of on the small side. And then, I'm looking at my recipe real quick. This is my recipe. I printed it out. Okay, so we're not going to add any of our seasonings until after everything's cooked. So I have some seasonings I've set aside, some turmeric, paprika, but we're not going to add those until after the potatoes are cooked. And then we'll add one of our other ingredients I'll tell you about in a minute. So I have my stock. I have 8 cups because I have some extra potatoes, but you can use less. You can use 6 cups instead of 8 cups. I just went a little overboard with my potatoes, and I realized, I thought, man, that's going to be a lot of potatoes to cook, and I need more liquid, so I added a little extra. So I have 8 cups of vegetable broth. I'm going to bring this to a boil and let it simmer for about 20 minutes for the potatoes to be cooked. Then I'll come back for the rest of it. One of the key ingredients for this soup is cashew cream. So I have it already made, and that's what makes it creamy. And cashew cream is nothing more than cashews that you've soaked in water, hot water, cold water for a couple hours, or hot water. I'm going to cover this so it will come to a boil quicker. Hot water, like boiling hot water, your cashews will be ready to go in a very short period of time, like 10 minutes. So you can use that, or you can just let it sit in cold water. But then once the cashews have been soaked, you put them in a high-speed blender with 1 cup of cashews and 1/2 cup of water, and then it turns into this nice kind of a cream. And that's what I like to use in my creamy broccoli soup. I have seen people in other recipes using coconut milk, and I'm trying to think what else. Coconut milk is the other kind of creamy texture I've seen. Or just, you can leave out any kind of creams if you want to, but I think the richness of it and the flavor of it is enhanced with the cashew cream. And when you come down to it, if you have 8 cups of broth, this might make a dozen cups of soup. And so my tablespoons of cashews dispersed among all this soup, you end up with not very much in your soup. It's a small amount for such a big impact of how the texture of the soup is. So I'm going to let this come to a boil and simmer for about 30 minutes, and then I'll be back to finish the rest. Okay, I'm back, and you can see where the soup has been bubbling away, and it's been going for about 20 minutes, and I can just tell. I picked up a potato, tasted it. It was perfect. So now remember my broccoli. This is about 4 cups of broccoli chopped really small, and that way it'll cook fast. And I anticipate about 5 minutes of cooking my broccoli in here. And then I'm going to come back and we'll do the final touches. We'll add the spices and cashew cream, and then we'll go from there. Okay, the broccoli has been cooking for the last 5 minutes, And I can tell by looking at it that it's changed colors and it's tender enough. I've done this before. I'm turning the heat off. You can see it's been kind of bubbling away. And you want your vegetables to be cooked, but you don't want to cook them to death. As long as the potatoes are soft and the broccoli is tender, we're good to go. So now I'm going to be adding a couple more things. Let me adjust my camera a little bit. Okay, I'm going to be adding the nutritional yeast, 2 tablespoons, and the recipe will be here below so you can get it. Teaspoon of paprika, sorry about that. About half a teaspoon of turmeric. That gives it a nice color. I'm not going to add a lot of salt. I will add a little bit of this. It's called Go-To salt, pepper, garlic blend. I'll add just a shake of that. It has a nice flavor. I do have my salt here, and I could add, like, say, half a teaspoon of salt, because it is a lot of vegetables, a lot of broth. So that little half teaspoon of salt will go a long way toward flavoring this. And that last but not least, we'll add our cashew cream. Like I said, it's just cashews blended with water, a cup of cashews to half a cup of water, in a high-speed blender till it's silky smooth. If your cashew cream is lumpy and gritty, and you can taste it to see, but if it's lumpy and gritty, it's going to be lumpy and gritty in your soup, and it's not going to taste good. So I've had people over the years make my recipes, and they'll say something like, well, I made that, and I'll show you how it's looking. See how it's looking creamy? They'll say, well, I made your thing with cashews, but it was real sandy. And I'll say, well, did you make sure that your cashews were creamy and smooth? And they're like, well, my blender won't make anything that smooth. So it's like, okay, well, if your blender is not cooperating, then there's not much you can do to get the soup texture that you want. So you have to make sure you have a high-speed blender. I have a Vitamix blender behind me. You can see the bottom of it. I also have a Beast blender, but it's out for repairs right now. So I'm going to take about 4. I've got my, see this over here. I've got my blender jar right here next to me, and I'm going to put about, I think I'm going to put 5 cups. That's 4. 1 more cup of my soup in the blender, and I'm going to blend this and add it back to the pan. The reason I'm doing that is because I like to have some texture. I don't want it to be a total creamy soup. I want it to be a soup that has a creamy texture but has some body to it, some texture in the soup, like the texture of the vegetables. So I'm going to process this really quickly. Make it nice and creamy. These Vitamix blenders work so fast. So in that short of a period of time, the soup turned out this real creamy, smooth soup. Now, if you like all your soup like this, let's say you wanted to have a whole bowl of soup that was smooth, silky, and creamy, then all you have to do is put it all in the blender, but don't do it all at one time. Do it in a couple of stages, because otherwise your blender will start overflowing. And there we have it. We have our creamy soup. Now, it's a little bit on the thin side because I added that extra water, but I like it like that. I don't want it to be so thick that it's like eating, solid creamy soup. So, excuse me. But you can see it's got a good texture. Delicious flavor. I could eat this all day long, and because it is kind of on the thin side, got some carrots on the side here. Because it is on the thin side, I ultimately think it's more satisfying that way. You can make yourself a generous bowl of it, take your time eating it, and it just, goes for, it has just tons of flavor. So you can see the texture of it. You can taste the chunks of potatoes, carrots, onions, and all of it. So make the soup. If you like it thicker, use a little bit less water, 6 cups instead of 8. And you could use more cashew cream if you want it creamier, but just make it the way you like it. Play around with it, use different vegetables. for now, this is the way I like it. And I've made it many times before. So creamy potato, broccoli, other vegetable soup. And I hope you make it and enjoy it. Bye-bye for now.